Cyrus the Great, Cyrus the Second of Persia, 600 to 530 BC, Old Persian, Kurush, commonly known as Cyrus the Great, and also called Cyrus the Elder by the Greeks, was the founder of the Achaemenid Empire, the first Persian empire. Under his rule, the empire embraced all of the previous civilized states of the ancient Near East, expanded vastly, and eventually conquered most of Western Asia and much of Central Asia, spanning from the Mediterranean Sea and Hellespont in the west to the Indus River in the east. The empire created by Cyrus was the largest the world had yet seen. At its maximum extent, under his successors, the Achaemenid Empire stretched from parts of the Balkans, eastern Bulgaria, Paeonia, and Thrace, Macedonia, and southern Europe proper in the west to the Indus Valley in the east. The reign of Cyrus lasted about 30 years. His empire took root with his conquest of the Median Empire, followed by the Lydian Empire, and eventually the Neo Babylonian Empire. He also led an expedition into Central Asia, which resulted in major campaigns that were described as having brought into subjection every nation without exception. Cyrus did not venture into Egypt, and was alleged to have died in battle while fighting the Massagetae along the Sir Daria in December 530 BC. However, Xenophon claimed that Cyrus did not die in battle and returned to the Achaemenid ceremonial capital of Persepolis again. He was succeeded by his son Cambyses II, who managed to conquer Egypt, Nubia, and Cyrenaica during his short rule. Cyrus is well known for having respected the customs and religions of the lands he conquered. He was important in developing the system of a central administration at Pasargadae, governing satraps in the empire's border regions, which worked very effectively and profitably for both rulers and subjects. The Edict of Restoration and Proclamation, attested by a cylinder seal in which Cyrus authorized and encouraged the return of the Israelites to the land of Israel following his conquest of the Neo Babylonian Empire, is described in the Bible, and likewise left a lasting legacy on the Jewish religion due to his role in ending the Babylonian captivity and facilitating the Jewish return to Zion. According to Isaiah 45:1 of the Hebrew Bible, God anointed Cyrus for this task, even referring to him as a Messiah, lit, anointed one. Cyrus is the only non Jewish figure in the Bible to be revered in this capacity. Cyrus is also recognized for his achievements in human rights, politics, and military strategy, as well as his influence on both Eastern and Western civilizations. The Achaemenid influence in the ancient world would eventually extend as far as Athens, where upper class Athenians adopted aspects of the culture of the ruling class of Achaemenid Persia as their own. Having originated from Persis, roughly corresponding to the modern day Fars province of Iran, Cyrus has played a crucial role in defining the national identity of modern Iran. He remains a cult figure amongst modern Iranians, with his tomb serving as a spot of reference for millions of people. In the 1970s, the last Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, identified Cyrus's famous proclamation inscribed onto the Cyrus cylinder as the oldest known declaration of human rights, and the cylinder has since been popularized as such. This view has been criticized by some Western historians as a misunderstanding of the cylinder's generic nature as a traditional statement that new monarchs make at the beginning of their reign. Etymology. The name Cyrus is a Latinized form, derived from the Greek language named Kyros, which itself was derived from the Old Persian name Kurush. The name and its meaning have been recorded within ancient inscriptions in different languages. The ancient Greek historians Ctesias and Plutarch stated that Cyrus was named from the sun, Kuros, a concept which has been interpreted as meaning like the sun, Kurvash, by noting its relation to the Persian noun for sun, Kor, while using Vash as a suffix of likeness. Karl Hoffman has suggested a translation based on the meaning of an Indo-European root to humiliate, and accordingly, the name Cyrus means humiliator of the enemy in verbal contest. Another possible Iranian derivation would mean the young one, child, related to Kurdish, Kur, son, little boy, or Ossetian, Igurun, to be born, and Kur, young bull. In the Persian language, and especially in Iran, Cyrus's name is spelled Kurosh. In the Bible, he is referred to in the Hebrew language as Koresh. Some pieces of evidence suggest that Cyrus is Khosrow, a legendary Persian king of the Kayanian dynasty and character in Shamania Persian epic. Some scholars, however, believe that neither Cyrus nor Cambyses were Iranian names, proposing that Cyrus was Elamite in origin and that the name meant he who bestows care in the extinct Elamite language. One reason is that while Elamite names may end in ush, no Elamite text spell the name this way, only Kurash. Meanwhile, Old Persian did not allow names to end in ash, so it would make sense for Persian speakers to change an original Kurash into the modern, more grammatically correct form Kurush. Elamite scribes, on the other hand, would not have had a reason to change an original Kurush into Kurash, since both forms were acceptable. Therefore, Kurash probably represents the original form. Dynastic history. The Persian domination and kingdom in the Iranian plateau started as an extension of the Achaemenid dynasty, who expanded their earlier dominion possibly from the 9th century BC onward. The eponymous founder of the dynasty was Achaemenes, from Old Persian Haksamanish. The Achaemenids are descendants of Achaemenes, as Darius the Great, the ninth king of the dynasty, traces his ancestry to him, declaring, "For this reason we are called Achaemenids." Achaemenes built the state Parsumash in the southwest of Iran and was succeeded by Teispes, who took the title king of Anshan. After seizing the city Anshan and enlarging his kingdom further to include Pars proper, ancient documents mention that Teispes had a son called Cyrus I, who also succeeded his father as king of Anshan. Cyrus I had a full brother whose name is recorded as Ariaramnes. In 600 BC, Cyrus I was succeeded by his son Cambyses I, who reigned until 559 BC. Cyrus II the Great was a son of Cambyses I, who had named his son after his father, Cyrus I. There are several inscriptions of Cyrus the Great and later kings that refer to Cambyses I as the Great King and King of Anshan. Among these are some passages in the Cyrus cylinder where Cyrus calls himself son of Cambyses, great king, king of Anshan. Another inscription from Siams mentions Cambyses the first as mighty king and then Achaemenian, which according to the bulk scholarly opinion was engraved under Darius and considered as a later forgery by Darius. However, Cambyses II's maternal grandfather, Pharnaspes, is named by historian Herodotus as an Achaemenian too. Xenophon's account in Cyropaedia further names Cambyses' wife as Mandane and mentions Cambyses as king of Iran, ancient Persia. These agree with Cyrus's own inscriptions, as Anshan and Parsa were different names of the same land. These also agree with other non-Iranian accounts, except at one point from Herodotus stating that Cambyses was not a king but a Persian of good family. However, in some other passages, Herodotus' account is wrong also on the name of the son of Chishpish, which he mentions as Cambyses, but according to modern scholars should be Cyrus I. The traditional view based on archaeological research and the genealogy given in the Behistun inscription and by Herodotus holds that Cyrus the Great was an Achaemenid. However, M. Waters has suggested that Cyrus is unrelated to the Achaemenids or Darius the Great, and that his family was of Teispid and Anshanite origin instead of Achaemenid. Early life. Cyrus was born to Cambyses I, king of Anshan, and Mandane, daughter of Astyages, king of Media, during the period of 600 to 599 BC. By his own account, generally believed now to be accurate, Cyrus was preceded as king by his father Cambyses I, grandfather Cyrus I, and great-grandfather Thespes. Cyrus married Cassandane, who was an Achaemenian and the daughter of Pharnaspes, who bore him two sons, Cambyses II and Bardia, along with three daughters, Atossa, Artiston, and Roxane. Cyrus and Cassandane were known to love each other very much. Cassandane said that she found it more bitter to leave Cyrus than to depart her life. After her death, Cyrus insisted on public mourning throughout the kingdom. The Nabonidus Chronicle states that Babylonia mourned Cassandane for 6 days, identified as 21 to 26 March 538 BC. After his father's death, Cyrus inherited the Persian throne at Pasargade, which was a vassal of Astyages. The Greek historian Strabo has said that Cyrus was originally named Agradates by his step-parents. It is probable that when reuniting with his original family following the naming customs, Cyrus's father Cambyses I named him Cyrus after his grandfather, who was Cyrus I. There is also an account by Strabo that claimed Agradates adopted the name Cyrus after the Cyrus River near Pasargade. Herodotus, Mythology, gave a mythological account of Cyrus's early life. In this account, Astyages had two prophetic dreams in which a flood and then a series of fruit-bearing vines emerged from his daughter Mandane's pelvis and covered the entire kingdom. These were interpreted by his advisors as a foretelling that his grandson would one day rebel and supplant him as king. Astyages summoned Mandane, at the time pregnant with Cyrus, back to Ecbatana to have the child killed. General Harpagus delegated the task to Mithridates, one of the shepherds of Astyages, who raised the child and passed off his stillborn son to Harpagus as the dead infant Cyrus. Cyrus lived in secrecy, but when he reached the age of 10, during a childhood game, he had the son of a nobleman beaten when he refused to obey Cyrus's commands, as it was unheard of for the son of a shepherd to commit such an act. Astyages had the boy brought to his court, and interviewed him and his adoptive father. Upon the shepherd's confession, Astyages sent Cyrus back to Persia to live with his biological parents. However, Astyages summoned the son of Harpagus, and in retribution chopped him to pieces, roasted some portions while boiling others, and tricked his adviser into eating his child during a large banquet. Following the meal, Astyages' servants brought Harpagus the head, hands, and feet of his son on platters, so he could realize his inadvertent cannibalism. In another version, Cyrus was presented as the son of a poor family that worked in the Median court. Part 1.